The White Book by Makavelli, Chapter 1980, Surprise! Jamaica, Kingston. Excerpt 16. Paul yelled over the radio.
Thomas, you be careful out there playing, you hear?
Yes, Papa. Paul strained, trying to pick him up. He opted for a kiss on the cheek instead. Then Thomas ran off to play with the other children. This was a joyous occasion, the first time he'd seen his son in 3 years. After his father's health improved, Paul returned to New York City 3 months after Gaeta had given birth. So far, this reunion was going better than that one. Brooklyn, 1972. Emaine came through wonderfully for Gaeta, staying with her and Thomas for 2 weeks until Mama Niece arrived to help care for them. It was a special time for them, as they became each other's extended family. Emaine would jokingly tell baby Thomas how lucky he was to have a supermodel as his godmother.
Even Samantha dropped in to congratulate the girls on their titles, having apologized for the misunderstanding in Jamaica long before. Mama Niece had been to America once, right after her husband died. But that was to Tampa, Florida. Nothing like New York. Something about the visit. She never had the urge to return. She'd warned Gaeta before she left home. But as we know, children, people for that matter, have their own living to do.
When Paul returned home, things had changed. Gaeta's doubts had escalated. She was used to his absence and did little to hide it. As for him, beautiful images of the home he'd tried for so long to forget kept entering his mind. The apartment on St. James was cold. The only warmth he felt there was the summer winds that blew in through the big bay windows. As the gap between the lovers grew, Paul and Mama Niece grew closer. She noticed that he lacked the rugged good looks and the strong take-charge attitude of the typical Caribbean man. Nevertheless, she believed that she'd found what her daughter had seen in him. His love was genuine and strong, but somehow he managed to be at once responsible and indecisive. Having known Paul's father for years, Mama Niece believed she knew the reason for his dueling natures. Olin, his papa, was a serious man and somewhat of a perfectionist. Knowing what was expected from the son of a preacher man couldn't have been easy for him. As a disciplined Rastafarian priest, Olin had been a dedicated soldier of the religious movement as well as Emperor Haile Selassie ever since 1930 when he was crowned in Ethiopia.
Me look for God. Me looking at Ethiopia, I say one man stand up with these names. Emperor Haile Selassie, name King of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering land of Judah, through the lineage of King Solomon and King David, written in the Bible.
The Rastafarian faith doesn't stray far from Christianity. They quote passages from the Bible as evidence of their struggle and observe Christian religious holidays. There are, however, two major differences. They insist that Jesus was a black man and should not be portrayed as a blue-eyed, pale-skinned European.
One of my things is that the Bible, them say that King James edit the Bible. Now, my understanding is that King James edited the Bible. I don't think he would edit it for the benefit of black people. So when the revelation turned out that Haile Selassie is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, coming straight through the lineage of King Solomon and King David, then, we really know that this is the Christ return. Because we know in this world, when the white man edit it, he wouldn't edit it in our behalf. He would have more edited to make it look like England going to be the big thing. But in the last days, they had proved out that is Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, and Haile Selassie's name is Rasta. So we are called Rastas, called by his name.
And also, anyone who would infringe upon their religious right to smoke marijuana is considered to be Babylonian.
You know what I mean? Let them Babylon.
While in Jamaica, Olin and Mama Niece had talked a few times about the fate of their children. Olin had never given up hope that one day his son would break the spell that the king's magicians had placed upon him. What spell? "What magician you talking about, old man?" asked Mama Niece. The religious scholar sat back in his chair and gave a history lesson to his in-law.
"We Rasta elders know the secret of 33rd degree Masons," he said. "It stems from the occult teachings of Master Builder Hiram Abiff. While constructing Solomon's temple, he renounced the Almighty in favor of a union between himself and the evil Semitic gods Baal and Thoth. Solomon ended his days surrounded by he-goats. Because of this, Masons were banned by Pope Clement XIV in 1773. But we Rastas feel the High Masons had already corrupted the Vatican."
Learning things like these from Papa Olin had helped Mama Niece to better understand he and his son's relationship. Some nights while Gaeta and the baby slept, she and Paul would stay up late looking out on the city, talking about dreams and life like only people who've experienced some of it can.
"I missed nights like these when I was in London. Everything's so drab over there. The sky was always cloudy. Very seldom you get to see things clearly. I know. Gaia hate going there to visit me brother. She say he rather stay home and work."
Mama Niece laughed at the memory. "Yeah, she told me that when we first moved in," said Paul.
"We used to sit here sometime, but Gaeta always want to go out someplace, do this and that. I tell her, girl, you got to slow down some."
He looked warmly towards the bedroom. "You know, Mama, I got feelings for Gaia, but sometime I don't know about her. One minute she blow hot, another time she cold. Too cold." "Oh, come on now, Papa. What you expect? She tell me how you two meet. A country girl, first day in the big city, she scared and alone. She act like she big and tough, but she just a little girl, you know." Paul became defensive. "Mama, you make it sound like I take advantage of your daughter. She was a big girl. We were in love." Mama Niece remained calm. "You say it best right there. Big girl. There is no doubt in me mind you two love each other. But maybe it's just a different kind of love. Paul, you're almost 15 years older than her. You've been places and seen things. Don't play crazy with me, Papa. You know what I mean. I never say you take advantage of her. Matter of fact, I want to thank you for watching over her. She was lucky to have you. But maybe now, she ready to be free. I'm her mama, and even I had to let her go." They sat silently taking sips from that special bottle and staring out the window for a long while. Something about the truth when it's spoken clearly. There's really nothing more than need be said. Most people can't handle it. They'll do anything not to hear it. Some will cut you off when they hear it coming. Others will literally run from it. Funny thing about that, though, if they didn't already know it, how would they know when to start running? Paul was getting too old to run. Time had just about caught up with him. The life he wanted to lead was coming to an end, and the life he was destined to lead was just beginning. After Mama Niece left in January of 73, Paul and Gaeta spent the next year making the transition from lovers to friends, all for the sake of their son. Paul was also preparing for the inevitable. 3 days after Christmas in 1974, he moved back to Jamaica and took over the church from his ailing father. It had taken him 18 years, but spell had finally been broken. Olin spent every waking moment preparing his successor until his death in the winter of 1976. The funeral was a huge and notable event. Gaeta and Thomas were in attendance along with the patrons and priests from all over the countryside who'd come to pay their last respects to one of the island's favorite sons and appoint the new pastor. But in a year of increasing political unrest as the CIA wreaked havoc on the country by means of destabilization, nothing was bigger news that year than the attempted murder in late November of another one of Jamaica's sons. 4 men in black surrounded the home, spraying bullets that shattered the windows and walls on the first floor. 2 more were in the front yard. One of them shot Rita Marley in the head as she and her 5 children tried to escape through the front door. Meanwhile, another gunman had entered the home and found her husband. One of the 8 shots fired at Bob Marley grazed his chest and landed in his arm.
What happened when you were shot? You were in your home.
Yeah.
Was it in the morning or at night or what happened?
Well, it was about, that's about 9 o'clock in the night.
Yeah.
What happened is that the night before, about 3 nights before that, I was living at a place called Bullby, you know? And I went home about 3 o'clock in the morning and get some sleep. And then I vision I was in a lot of gunshot, you know? That was a dream. I was in a barrage, a gunshot, but when it all over, you know, it's like me never really get no shot. But me see my mother get shot. You know, the vision show my mother get shot in her head. And what happened is like the vision said, don't run. You know, it's like, you know, all of this gunshot is like something that the vision said, don't run, stand up. So when the gunshot started firing on Hope Road, the first thing come back to my mind was the vision. And all I could remember is that the vision said, don't run. And somebody have to stand up, you know. And, you know, them fire until it was tired of fire, and then two is not really a lawful gun battle. Man start to run and it ease up, you know. And
Where were you hit?
Eh?
Where were you hit?
Me? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Went right through? Or just skinned
No,
it?
them said lodge inside there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You never saw the gunman?
Well, at that time, no.
But you know who did it?
You ever know them?
Were they caught?
No, but I don't court the police. It's just, you know, one of them things.
Gunshot wounds and all, the defiant singer and his band, the Wailers, performed as scheduled just a few days later at the Smile Jamaica Fest. The next year was considered to be bad luck by learned Rastas due to St. John the Divine's apocalyptic revelations of coinciding sevens.
You know, we, our people, have our roots. When we search for it, we find it in a Rasta. Because we don't see, there's no other way. We don't see no other way. It's Rasta we find the roots in there, you know.
On July 7, 1977, Jamaica resembled a ghost town as many residents stayed locked in their homes. Many third world countries share similar superstitions. In Brazil, the entire month of August is said to be cursed. It's said to be the time that the devil deals the cards. They call it the month of sorrow and grief. Even Marley, the once strong and vibrant Rasta, whose faith in Jah shielded him from the shadows, had begun to feel their presence. In 77, he sat in a tree talking with some old friends while somberly dispensing revelations of his own. Excerpt 17.
From chapter 1980, Surprise, page 104. Me gwine die at 36, just like Jesus Christ. Bob Marley, words of his future.
Have you made a lot of money out of your music?
Money. I mean, how much is a lot of money to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Have you made, say, millions of dollars?
No.
Are you a rich man?
When you mean rich, what you mean?
Do you have a lot of possessions? A lot of money in the bank?
Position make you rich? I don't have that type of richness. My richness is life, forever.
Gaeta received her own share of bad news in 77 when Paul called and informed her that he was engaged to be married. She held the phone at a loss for words. When she found out who it was, she immediately remembered Colleen, one of the church's older secretaries. Gaeta also remembered just how much the lady reminded her of her mother. It wasn't until now that Gaeta had gotten up the nerve to visit her ex again. Jamaica, Kingston. Paul, you worry too much. He's a big boy now, and the other children won't let no harm come to their brother. Gaeta calmed herself. Colleen was right. They were all good kids and excited to see their little brother form the States. From the corners of their eyes, she and Colleen exchanged glances. You too, Mama. Colleen smiled as they went about preparing the conch, rice, plantains, and menudo for supper. Maybe this will work out, Gaeta thought. After the meal, they took a stroll around town. It gave everyone a chance to catch up. The sun was like a crooked cop beating on them as they walked peacefully down the street. Gaeta apologized for Thomas's remarks on the menudo. He's just not used to it. I don't cook it much at home. Don't worry, said Colleen. Times are changing. Kids these days don't like it much. It's like cabbage or something. In the distance, they heard popping sounds. There was no mistaking them this time. Brooklyn had schooled Gaeta.
Good God Almighty! Has the whole world gone crazy? They shooting guns in the daylight now.
Colleen's younger brother Lennox explained how from Kingston to Negril, things had taken a turn for the worst in the short time since Edward Siega had taken office.
Yeah, man. Things done changed on this side too, you know. American secret police come around starting trouble for the Rasta man. Now they catch you with just a joint, you going dung so. That's right, Gaia, added Paul. Rasta or no, they say you can't be smoking, selling, or growing. They come through with the big guns and take everybody crop and make it theirs. Lennox weighed in again.
Now everybody changing their business to cocaine and heroin, and lots of them using what they're supposed to be selling, you know. They reached a corner store, and Lennox asked his sister for 50 cents. He came out with a cold red stripe. Where's your manners, boy? Asked Gaeta. Go back in there and get some more, she said, handing him some money. As they walked back to the house, they sipped and talked some more. Goodness gracious, said Gaia, shaking her head. So things here are just as bad as the States. They're probably worse here, said Colleen. You know the talk is that Bob is dying. They poisoned that poor child. Nobody never get no cancer from ganja. Tosh don't have cancer, and they say he smoked more than Marley. Lennox laughed. Yeah, about 2 pounds a week, he said. Them people taking out anybody they think gonna make trouble for them. Anybody who know too much. He finished his beer and sang Marley's famous line from Rat Race. Rasta don't work for no CIA. You really think the CIA is trying to kill him?
On the news, they say it was robbers that shoot up the place.
Everyone spoke at the same time, making Gaeta's answer loud and clear. Yes! Gaeta didn't want to accept the thought that in America, the land of the free, entertainers were being targeted for simply voicing their opinions. If that were true, then who was next? Lennox told her about how he'd attended meetings with members of JLP and the movement who'd exposed some information about the ailing star's health. First, they believed that the real source of his sickness could be traced to a visit he received right after the assassination attempt. Secluded in the mountains and under heavy guard, Carl Colby, the son of former CIA Director William E. Colby, managed to somehow find his whereabouts and get past armed Rastafarian bodyguards with a gift for Bob Marley, a pair of new boots. Marley tried them on and was pricked. He became sick soon after and was diagnosed with cancer. A source close to Marley and in the house that night had this to say. Excerpt 19. Chapter 1980 Surprise, page 106. A length of copper wire was pulled from the boot after Marley injured his toe while trying it on. While the band was preparing for the Smile Jamaica Festival performance, a gift addressed to Marley himself was delivered backstage. It was from Carl Colby, son of the CIA director William Colby. Inside was a pair of cowboy boots. When Marley tried them on, something sharp inside one of the boots pricked his toe. A length of copper wire was discovered embedded deep inside the boot. Many people believe that sharp wire contained a radioactive substance because it was that exact toe that subsequently developed cancer. Lou Lee, the documentary filmmaker, is quoted as having said, "Someone gave Bob a pair of boots. He put his foot in and said, 'Ow!' A friend got in there. You know how Jamaicans are. He said, 'Let's get in here, in the boot,' and he pulled a piece of copper wire out. It was embedded in the boot. Marley broke his toe playing soccer in Paris in 1977, and unfortunately, the same toe that was pierced by the copper wire wouldn't heal. Doctors not only found the rare form of cancer, but determined that it had metastasized. When he was told, Marley felt certain that he could fight it. It wasn't until 1980 that Marley was finally convinced to seek proper medical help. By this time, though, it was too late. From the website https://www.historicmysteries.com/was-bob-marley-assassinated/. Other reported CIA-developed carcinogens were MK Ultra and MK Search, both code names for projects aimed at the use of drug experimentation for mind control. STP, PCP, LSD, and MDMA are all drugs belonging to a group known as hallucinogens that have ties to government-owned and funded labs where they've also developed their own strains of hydroponic marijuana known as G13. Yeah, sister, if you don't know, now you know, he said. You better take some time out and learn about the agency. Keep your eye on them, because they certainly keeping the eye on you. Gaeta's head was spinning, thinking about all the new knowledge. It was interesting enough, but she didn't have time to waste worrying about things that would never affect her. Still, a little voice in her head urged her to dig deeper. But why would the CIA care about the reggae singer? What can he do? By now, they were back at the house, and Colleen had pulled out some beers from the icebox. Lennox rolled a few and passed them around. What about the lawman? Asked Gaeta. We run tings. Tings no run we, Paul said defiantly. He flicked his lighter and lit up. I'm a man of the cloth, and this be a house of Jah. He coughed a bit and said in a low voice, I got what they call religious immunity. They all sat on the porch laughing as Lennox began to talk. It's an inconvenient truth. The entertainer of today be the politician of tomorrow. Look at your Reagan. The entertainers got the hearts and minds of the people. They called him the Rat Pack. Gaeta and Paul traded glances, remembering that day in the cab. Paul waved to his brother-in-law. Rat Patrol. Rat Pack is Sinatra and Sammy. Lennox blew him off. Them too. A few words from them can change public opinion, especially the youth. That's true, said Colleen. They gets all high from drinking and smoking. Then they get to feeling the music and ain't no telling what they'll do. Look at what they did for Manson. Paul nodded. Not just that. More importantly, the vote. They tell Bob they kill him for sure if he comes home before the election. Ciega is the agency's man here. Everybody knows that election was rigged. France, Paris. In the days of October, high in the skies above Paris, Colonel Aloysius Devine gave landing information to the pilot of the private Gulfstream jet. He then placed the call to the COS, who was just miles below on the tarmac. Even so, this mission was considered top secret, and all communications were being filtered through Langley. The voice on the other end of the phone answered, Statcom. Statcom, this is Spartacus. I need a secure line to Imamaya. The operator requested further identification. Once it was provided, he was connected with a familiar voice. This is Imamaya. Go ahead. Imamaya, we have the package. ETA is 10 minutes. Is there a green light? That's affirmative, Spartacus. Project Takeover is a go. Confirming rendezvous in 10. Clear. He relayed the message to his superiors as the plane full of Good Shepherds and the 40 million members of King George's cavalry strapped in and prepared for the landing. The jet taxied into a hangar at the far end of the runway. Inside were intelligence agents from France's SDECE, Israel's Mossad, Iran's Savak, and America's CIA. The doors were immediately shut behind them, and less than an hour later, envoys of limousines and luxury vehicles quietly emerged from the hangar. A short time later, the aircraft was once again airborne, this time bound for Washington, D.C., where at the Tony Alibi Club, certain passengers had important matters to discuss. Aloysius steered his vehicle swiftly up Champ's Elise's on one of the 12 roads that feed into one of the city's greatest monuments, the Arc de Triomphe. 4 scenes of valiant and noble soldiers led by sword-wielding seraphim and beautiful worshipping maidens were depicted on the pillars of l'Arc. Engraved on the inside and presented by cherubim is a tribute. The names of the Paris's fallen heroes, Napoleon Bonaparte, and family in particular. They'd given the ultimate sacrifice for France during the Revolution. This was the Brotherhood's idea of a joke that Aloysius always got a kick out of, since it was their conspiracy that Napoleon had fought and lost against, and since it was them who dedicated the monument. And if that weren't enough, there were the symbols of a Brotherhood assassination. There was the eternal flame of the unknown soldier, and not far from that, pointing to the heavens, was Les Obelisques, where the names of even more murdered revolutionaries adorn the walls. To Aloysius, l'Arc was more of a warning to any future dissidents than a tribute. He knew Benjamin would be there waiting. It was ritual for them to meet and go to the Corona when in Paris. He merged with the traffic and circled twice before he saw his old friend. He threw his hazards on and Benjamin jumped in the car. They hugged and greeted each other, to strict observance. Aloysius handed Benjamin a cigar and said, "I'm getting rusty, old friend. I had to circle twice before I saw you. I was just thinking, I'll remember to bring infrared glasses next time." They both laughed and got up. "Well, Spartacus," Benjamin raised his eyebrow, "how did everything go?" Aloysius laughed heartily. "He doesn't need it anymore. So I thought, who better to have it than me? What about you?" Aloysius raised an eyebrow of his own. "Imamaya? Well, the more I seek, the more I discover my true nature." He chuckled. "Besides, it fits my promotion to chief of station over here." "You pulled a good one. You've been here about a year now, right?" "Yes, sir. I don't do much these days. Mostly pencil pushing or some briefings here and there. I've become a yeoman." The two buddies went quiet, thinking about their glory days as 007s. "I'm right behind you," confessed Aloysius. "Luckily, I'd been involved in so many projects with G2 and ACIS during Operation Phoenix, they remembered me. But I thank you. I know it was your outstanding recommendation that sealed the deal. I owe this assignment to you." "Perhaps it's time we go private," said Benjamin somberly. Aloysius blew a ring of smoke into the crisp Parisian air. What the hell was Carter thinking? He stepped on a lot of toes when he made those cuts. 800 operatives. That nut is the reason those hostages are in Iran in the first place. Benjamin turned to face him. "My friend, from what I just witnessed in the hangar, the hostages are as good as free, and the Carter administration is history." The Bronx, a few weeks later. "Mama, come here. Ma, come look. The hostages is free." The boy had finished his homework and wanted his television time. But tonight, Marion said, was important. She was watching the only TV in the house because tonight the results of a long campaign for president would be announced, and for months she'd smell something foul in the air. Tonight America watched as Ronald Reagan, a former B-list movie actor, was elected the 39th president of the United States. The campaign had been close, as each candidate's numbers went up and down in the polls. Political strategists saw 52 Americans who'd been held hostage in Iran since November 4th, 1979, as the election's X factor. Whoever negotiated their release would most likely be the next president. After Reagan beat Bush in the primary, pressure mounted for him to pick a running mate. When talk emerged of a sort of co-presidency with former President Gerald Ford, Reagan quickly chose Bush, a man he'd expressed a subtle dislike for in the past. With Bush and a secret army of current and fired intelligence officers holding a grudge against Carter on board, the games could begin. During Reagan's acceptance speech, just moments after mentioning them, an emergency announcement was broadcast. 1 year to the day they were captured, the hostages had been freed. It was like Mr. Reagan had magically willed their release. If any doubters remained about electing an entertainer as president, this act would surely comfort them. Marion wasn't buying it. "What?" She lowered her voice. She'd just gotten Cheris to sleep. The boy should have been in bed too, but Marion had gone easy on him since he had missed his programs. "If you stay up," she'd said, "we're watching this." After a commercial broke the spell of Ted Koppel's voice, the boy went back to playing with his 2XL computer. In reality, it was a glorified 8-track tape player with dreams of being a computer. The boy had his 2 tapes completely memorized, and with just one television in the house and Marion watching the news day in and day out, he'd also memorized certain names and phrases too. Sometimes when Marion had been drinking with her friends, he'd push her buttons just for fun. "Ma, who is Barbara Walters, Dick Cheney, and Barry Goldwater?" "Goddamn devil bitches," she'd yelled. "Every last one of them is some Council on Foreign Relations working for right-wing Republican bitches. Fuck them, and that punk-ass Rockefeller act too." The boy would crack a smile and giggle with his sister. "I told you I could make Mama say bitch anytime I get ready." Sometimes Marion's friends would join in, usually from least drunk to the most. "Yeah, if any of them get in, we are all FUBAR," yelled Danny. The boy looked up. FUBAR? That was one he hadn't heard before. "Danny, what the hell is FUBAR?" someone asked. The room quieted some. Danny was a funny white dude who'd become part of the crew. His body had made it home, but his mind was still in the war. "That's, fucked up beyond all recognition," he slurred. Everybody in the house roasted him that day, but tonight Marion agreed. Shit was bad enough with Carter. Now it's really FUBAR, she thought. In the 25-plus years since the October Surprise, numerous people connected to or investigating it have died under suspicious circumstances. Yet a number of official investigations into the matter have repeatedly found no evidence of any wrongdoing. As 1980 came to a close, the agency watched us with a microscope as the other X Factor, Generation X, sat watching back with the eyes of a kaleidoscope. In the Midwest, the blizzard of '79 had left Chicago covered in a blanket of white. In Washington, D.C., black clouds loomed over the White House, while green, the color of currency, and envy ruled as it always had in capitalist New York. In March, Castro opened Mariel Harbor and flooded Miami with a sea of brown-skinned Cuban refugees searching for the American dream. And on the waters of the Pacific, a tsunami had long been brewing. When it hit, an enormous wave of blue and red crashed into the communities of Los Angeles and beyond, prompting residents to scream for disaster relief. In a campaign speech, Reagan stood waving before a cheering crowd, his wife Nancy to the right of him, and George H.W. Bush to the left. At one point he said,
"I am not frightened by what lies ahead, and I don't believe the American people are frightened by what lies ahead."
The boy was also watching. He too was unafraid of what lay ahead, because unlike Reagan, he knew the danger was to the side of him. That concludes this narration of Chapter 1980 of The White Book by Makavelli. There is a link in the description below to purchase a physical hard copy of the book.